one guardian can do, with nothing but your ghost, your weapon, and your light.
Ladies and gents, my name is Xander, aka Diaside, and in this video, we're going to discuss mastering hand cannon shot rhythm in Destiny 2. More specifically, this is pretty much a tutorial on how to aim with 150 and 140 rate of fire hand cannons, and the way in which you do this is through a process called shot rhythm. But many of you might be scratching your heads and saying, okay, hold on Xander, what exactly is shot rhythm? I refer to it in almost every single one of my videos, and that's because it is pivotal for you to grasp and comprehend. And for hand cannons, in particular 140s and 150s, it is essential for you to grasp if you want to get the weapon's optimal time to kills at 0.8 seconds and 0.87 seconds respectively. In other words, we're going to be breaking down shot rhythm into pretty much one of 4 steps, and the first one is then going to include things like centering your target and crosshair vision. Ensuing this is finding that head level height consistently, and then following that is shot cadence. Don't worry, I'll explain all in just a little bit, but just know that it pertains to something like, say, the weapon's recoil, its bullet sound, and things like that. And then finally, we're then going to incorporate some tactics that I like to use, such as joystick jab, along with something like, say, line of sight and tracking your targets. Everything that I've just mentioned is then going to culminate into what is called shot rhythm. And at the very end of the video, hopefully you'll be laying so many critical headshots that you're going to be acting like you're in the Kingsman, popping off all those heads just like some fantastic fireworks, but the only thing you have to do is just to simply sit back, relax, even hit the notification button, and let's jump right into the video. One thing that I forgot to mention is that you're going to be seeing all these techniques that I just described to you in a breakdown analysis via some examples later on in the video. And so for now, the very first thing that we gotta cover is centering your target. I'm sure you might be asking, what exactly is centering your target? Pretty much it's the process of you making sure that the enemy guardian is directly in the middle of your screen before you ever aim down sights. The key word there, my friends, is before, because the whole intention of doing this is to make sure that as soon as you happen to then ADS, you have the most minute of minute adjustments to make, and then lo and behold, before you even know it, your reticle sight is going to be directly on the enemy guardian's noggin. There is no doubt in my mind that you are probably already using this exact same process and you don't even realize it. Because if you happen to use something like, say, a sniper rifle, a pulse rifle, a sidearm, even a shotgun, all those things require you to center your target and then have the most minute of minute adjustments to make to then land more critical headshots. Again, I'll show some examples of this in just a little bit, but the best way to practice it is just by simply going into PvE and shooting at some inanimate object. What I like to do is just to simply do a 180 spin at some object, like say a rock, a sign, whatever it might be, and then see if my actual aiming down sights is going to be directly aligned with where I was actually intending to look at. If where you want to look at is then going to match up with exactly the ADS sight, then bada bing bada boom, you've got centering your target down, piece of cake, no problem whatsoever. Now something else that you can kind of do to improve centering your target is a process that I like to call crosshair vision. Pretty much what this is only looking at the reticle's sight and that's it. Nothing more, nothing less. Because the whole intention behind this is so that when you're actually looking at something that's not moving, your human eye is naturally drawn to something else that's moving. And so if you focus what isn't moving to what is moving, then all of a sudden you're going to be able to land so many more of your shots. Now to make sure that we're landing all those shots, even on guardians who look like they're the Energizer Bunny jumping all over the place, what we gotta do is make sure that we're landing head level height shots. And the best thing about Destiny 2 and even Destiny 1 is that every single guardian has the exact same height. This then means to you that their height is predictable, and so you can then use your environment to then dictate or rather predict as to where that height is then going to be. For example, doorways, hallways, crossways, all that kind of stuff, they're always going to have this overall height limit that you can then predict as to where a guardian is then going to walk through or in some cases crouch through. If you see a guardian walking through a doorway, you can then expect that doorway to be approximately 3/4 the height, and that's then where the guardian's head is going to be. The exact same thing can also be said if they're crouching through that doorway, as that's then going to be approximately 1/4 that height. Following this exact same thought process, let's just say that somebody is head glitching, say, behind some steps or maybe behind a rail. This is wonderful news for you because all you simply have to do is find their head. And once you find that head, it's going to be like taking candy from a baby because the only thing that's moving to you is then their head. And that's coupling the tips that we've already talked about, like crosshair vision and centering your target, it's going to make those shots so easy to hit, almost like you're playing whack-a-mole, and man is that fun game to play. Taking one teeny tiny step back, pretty much everything that I said so far can be used not just for hand cannons, but it can be used specifically for the 140s and the 150s, and yet at the same time it can still be used for pulse rifles, snipers, and so on and so forth. But the next tactic, aka shot cadence, is really going to be catered to specifically the 140s and the 150 rate of fire hand cannons. In being as crystal clear as I possibly can, shot cadence is not the same thing as shot rhythm, because shot rhythm pertains to include everything that I've said with all those techniques, along with shot cadence inside of that, and then some other things like line of sight and tracking your target, and so on and so forth. Now you're probably asking yourselves the question, okay, so what exactly is shot cadence? Well, my friends, this pertains to a hand cannon's width, its height, its ADS sight, its recoil, its bullet sound, its ornament if it has one, and even something like, say, damage numbers. All those things that I just mentioned is different for every single hand cannon, and that then means to you that their shot cadence is going to be very, very unique. To kind of prove my point, what I want to do next is I want to show you a side-by-side comparison analysis of the spare rations with the killing orchid and the old-fashioned hand cannons. And what you're seeing right now on screen is exactly those three weapons in that order going from left to right, but they're also in the process of running. As I'm running against this wall, you can obviously tell that their width and their length is very, very different. And the reason why this is so important to note is because when you're then running and then finding a guardian, your peripheral vision is then coming into play. When you stop running and then go to ADS, that's then going to have the exact same effect and potentially make you either miss or land your shot. And the same thing can also be said for other exotics, such as the ones that you see right there on screen, with the thorn on the left, the ace of spades in the center, and the sunshot on the right hand side. In this respect, it's even more profound, because you can tell that all these exotic weapons have much, much bigger barrel lengths, and this then also entails that might affect their overall shot rhythm. The thorn is actually so great that it touches the top of the screen in this particular image, but the same thing can also be said for someone like, say, an ornament. And to kind of get this point across, what I'm showing you now is the last word, both with the weapon on the left without its ornament and its ornament on the right hand side. This once again is then going to affect how these weapons are then going to play from engagement to engagement to engagement. When you're running and then aiming down sights, this process that I just described to you is then going to dictate as to who lands that first shot. And so it's pivotal for us to grasp that how these weapons are looking in our peripheral visions is then going to affect as to whether or not we're then going to land that first shot or not. Similarly, I want to show you a side-by-side comparison analysis of all these weapons aiming down sights. And so here we can see an image of the spare rations on the left, the killing orchid in the center, and the old-fashioned on the right-hand side. The killing orchid followed by the spare rations and ensued by the old-fashioned is then going to take up the smallest to largest peripheral vision. And what we want to have is the largest peripheral vision possible. And so for this case, the killing orchid has the clear advantage here because its overall sight is then not only going to take up less of your screen, allowing you to see more guardians, but it can also then allow you to see more of the enemy guardian's body more regularly. When landing consecutive shots, this is essential to do, and we can see the exact same thing with the exotic weapons I mentioned from earlier, and right there we had the thorn on the left, the ace of spades in the center, and the sunshot on the right hand side. The thorn, just like the killing orchid, has the clear advantage here, and that's because its sight allows you to see more of the enemy guardian's body and thus give you a better chance to land more shots in their head, thus obtain the weapon's optimal TTK that much more frequently. Now, does this mean that the ace of spades and the sunshot are bad? No, it doesn't. It just simply means that their overall shot cadence is going to be different from one weapon to the next. And to follow this exact same wavelength, what I want to show you next is a side-by-side comparison analysis of yet again the last word without the ornament on the left and the ornament on the right-hand side. We can see how these two things are then going to be significantly and drastically different, all from simply changing an ornament, and that to me is just mind-boggling and crazy because the ornament on the right has actually much more of a cone shape to it, whereas the weapon on the left has more of like a pyramid shape to it, and thus that's going to then change how we're going to land our first shots and consecutive shots afterwards. In seeing those comparisons, I think that you guys now kind of get a sense as to how I'm talking about how these things are so different, not just by simply running, but then all of a sudden stopping and aiming down sights to then see how their sights are drastically different. I know, you're probably thinking, Xander, but this is only the very first shot, so what about the shots afterwards and the consecutive shots? And to you I say, I've done the exact same analysis yet again, but this time showing the first shot and its recoil pattern, and we can see all those results right there on screen. In the exact same order that it was from before, you can tell that the spare rations has a little bit more of a recoil than that of the killed orchid, but the old-fashioned has more than even both of them. And this is then going to affect how their weapons are then going to act in landing consecutive shots back to back to back. What I also want to note here though is that every single one of these weapons still allows you to see the shot and thus never actually lose line of sight. But the same thing cannot be said for the exotic weapons that we were looking at from before. And just to show you guys this, we can see that analysis right there on screen. With the thorn, you can tell that the weapon actually covers up the bullet, and this then means to you that this weapon's then going to lose line of sight when you're shooting consecutive shots. But the same thing is not said for the ace of spades, and you can clearly see that bullet damage right there against the wall. But as far as the sunshot goes, this weapon has explosive rounds, and so this explosive shot also might be harder to use simply because that flash is then going to potentially allow you to miss line of sight. I cannot stress to you as to how important it is to always maintain line of sight on the enemy guardians, and when a weapon's recoil is then going to inflict with that, that's then going to be a significant hindrance to you. But it's not the end of the world, because what you can do is once again understand these things, and as you do understand them, you'll then master their shot cadence. But mastering their shot cadence is not only pertaining to the things that I've just said so far, and rather it's the bullet sound. All the hand cannons that we've seen so far have a very distinctive sound, and you can then time this with that recoil control to then make sure that that sound is then timing that with the weapon's recoil and thus the enemy guardian's head all at the same time. To drive this point home, I'm going to turn on the music all the way and then I'm going to turn up the game volume max, so then you guys can hear as to exactly what I mean by each one of these weapons' very unique and distinctive bullet sounds. And hearing that, you could probably make a freaking orchestra sing with all its weapons' different sounds, and that right there is what makes their shot cadences so unbelievably easy to master, because once again, all of them have different things. And as I said from before, all of them are then going to be able to have these things correlate from one to the next, and thus we're then going to be able to master that shot cadence easier and easier and easier. The difference here is understanding that all these things exist, and the very last thing that I want to cover that can potentially affect this is seeing damage numbers. You are a human being just the same way that I am and we all are, and humans recognize visual patterns. When you see those damage values and you can incorporate those with something like, say, the weapon's recoil, its overall sight, its overall bullet sound, then we're getting somewhere and you guys can really kind of comprehend as to how all these things are then going to correlate into making a shot cadence. With this, I kind of want to go briefly back to what I mentioned from earlier, and that is line of sight. And the thing that you have to understand about line of sight is that you want to track your target constantly. It doesn't matter if they're going to the left, to the right, up in the air, or down below you. All those things have to be tracked, and you then have to anticipate, keyword anticipate, and then not hesitate into mastering that shot cadence, so then you can actually predict as to where that person's then going to go without even thinking about the weapon shot cadence at all. What I just described to you is that line of sight and tracking your target is then going to lead to the mindset of anticipation without hesitation. This is something that I apply every single engagement, as I'm always trying to anticipate as to where the enemy guardian's going to go, and even if I have to miss a shot, I'm not going to hesitate, because I know that with this weapon shot rhythm, I've mastered it to a certain extent, and then most likely, you've annihilated, decimated, and obliterated guardians just like Exodia and Yu-Gi-Oh! Now, a technique that I like to call the joystick jab has helped me a colossal amount in being able to land more of my shots consecutively. And pretty much what this is that every single time that you're then firing the weapon, you're then pulling the joystick down at a 45-degree angle, or approximately around thus, maybe say like a 30-degree angle give or take, and that's then going to allow you to counteract the weapon's overall recoil, making it smaller and smaller and smaller, and thus actually able to land more of your shots more consistently. To really get a better sense of this, what I want to do next is show you guys a couple of examples, and here we're going to break this down step by step, and the very first example that we have is with the old-fashioned. As I show you guys this engagement in real time and slow motion, what I want you to take away from this is a couple of things. This first example is a really great one to show head level height, and the way in which I'm determining this is by using the environment to my advantage as well as my position. Notice how I didn't hesitate in that very first engagement, and rather I didn't anticipate as to exactly what he was then going to do, and within 4 shots I was able to land all of them and be able to down him no problem. But then the second guardian came out of pretty much nowhere and he was trying to head glitch, yet I wasn't terrified, because his head was in the exact place in which I was anticipating it to be, and using the head level height of the rail, it was like shooting darts and landing a bullseye every single time. This just goes to show you the importance of understanding head level height. But the next engagement is with the ace of spades, and here we happen to find myself against a guardian, and I land 3 critical headshots, tap tap tap, and then I reload to get the damage buff. Now the next guardian, I happen to land every single shot, but notice in that second engagement, I didn't see any damage values. And it's not because anybody's lagging, it's just simply because the game doesn't register that you're actually landing those shots when in reality you are. Now some of you are probably thinking, But Xander, not seeing those critical damage values or just simply damage values at all, is then going to affect the weapon's shot cadence. And to you, I say yes, you're 110% right. But at the same time, you still happen to have the weapon's length, its width, its overall bullet sound, its recoil, and those things combined can still give you a wonderful shot cadence. Now the next engagement that I'm going to show you is with the spare rations. And right here I put it on pause because all of a sudden these two guys are right in my face and I have to make a clear-cut choice as to which one I'm then going to go for. Obviously, I can't shoot both of them at the same time, so I decide to then go for the guy in the back, then finish him off, get the guy in front of him, finish him off, reload, and then happen to get the next guy, but yet again, I see no damage values. I don't let that bother me and trust the weapon to land its shots, and sure enough, it does. And so I really want you to focus in on here, is that yet again, I applied the anticipation without hesitation technique, and yet at the same time, I was actually able to change out the weapon and utilizing it two different ways, via ADS and also hipfire, without breaking the weapon's overall shot rhythm. Even if I didn't happen to have the weapon's recoil there, I was still able to listen and hear the weapon's bullets firing in their very distinct way, and thus still be able to land that shot in between hipfire and ADS, and lo and behold, I came out on top, being a sneaky little ninja, just like a Naruto. Now the next engagement that I want to show you is using the Thorn. I was a little bit further than what I would like to have been, but nonetheless, I trusted the weapon's shot cadence and I was actually able to land the vast majority of my shots here, and at the very end of the engagement, I actually happened to get the next guardian by shooting 2 bullets, breaking the shot rhythm, getting behind cover, and then coming back out to land the last shot. Never be afraid to miss shots, because if you are, you're never going to take the shots to begin with, and then you're never actually going to land and kill the enemy guardian. So always take the shots, but be mindful of the weapon's shot cadence as you're doing so. Even if you happen to have 2 shots, don't feel like you have to finish the engagement and land them in 3 crits all the time. Maybe go from behind cover, even though right here you see that Guardian's fusion rifle actually shot me through the wall. Bungie, this is shenanigans, aka Fluff Cabbage trash shenanigans, but despite that, the end result was still the same, and you guys can see that this type of mentality is going to win you the vast majority of your engagements. Last but not least is an engagement using my baby, the Killed Orchid. And for those of you that haven't watched it yet, I just made a video as to why this Killed Orchid is the best hand cannon in the entire game, but that's besides the point, and so onto the engagement. You're then going to see that I'm laying literally every single shot here except for 1 shot from 4 different guardians. As I played that engagement in real time and then rewind it, put in slow motion and so on and so forth, what you're then going to realize is that the very first engagement, I never broke line of sight, even though that guardian was in the air, and even with him being in the air, I happened to predict as to exactly where he was going to be, laying crits all the way through, and that is what allowed me to then get the weapon's optimal time to kill at 0.87 seconds. The reason why this is so is because I've now mastered this weapon so much to the point that I understand as to how it's then going to affect my peripheral vision, the weapon's bullet sound, how that's then going to have a cadence with the weapon's recoil control, with the weapon's overall sight, how those factors are then going to couple together to get the overall result that you guys just saw. If you were to ask me, I would say the enemy guardians are a little bit salty. But this wouldn't have been possible if I wasn't centering my target, applying crosshair vision, understanding head level height and how to determine it, never breaking line of sight, along with tracking my target and then still applying the joystick jab technique. Apply this with the anticipation without hesitation mindset. Oh my goodness gracious, my friends, you are going to become one colossal hitting monster in PvP, and it's not going to matter what kind of hand cannon that you use, because whether it's a 150 or it's a 140 or maybe even a 110, all these things still apply for all those weapons. Which weapon that you choose is entirely up to you and your personal preference and playstyle, so by all means, let me know down in the comment section below and your thoughts on this video's tips, tricks, and tactics on how to use specifically 140 and 150 rate of fire hand cannons. After applying some of the tips, has your hand cannon aim improved? If it has, I can't wait to hear about all that success, but no matter what you guys say, you always know that I'm going to respect your opinions, and that is something that I can guarantee. Lastly, be sure to watch the newest, check the latest, and share, comment, like on social media because you are the greatest. That's much all I've got for you as of right now, Diaslayers. As always, GG, TNT.